Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Jim Mathrusse, who is the Director of Curriculum Development for Cloud Operations at Microsoft. Jim's academic background from UCSB and Stanford prepared him for teaching history at a secondary school and community colleges, but he soon moved into high technology and added industrial engineering from Cornell to help him transition to his current career roles. With over 25 years of experience in the IT and learning industry, Jim has a proven track record of creating and implementing professional learning systems that optimize onboarding programs and resources, technical and professional skilling courses, role-based learning paths, collections, and libraries to create logical curriculum matrices with measurable individual and organizational impact. Wow, what a mouthful. He has worked with his peers to integrate a sales enablement model with vertical operations teams to better define their strategic plans and learning needs to key results. He has also designed and managed a global curriculum for software development at Oracle before joining Microsoft. Prior to his IT and L&D experiences, he worked for several years as an IT analyst, software integrator, and master scheduler/product planner for manufacturing companies. Jim has a fascinating background. I am so happy to have you here on the podcast today, Jim. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Melissa. I'm listening to that back and thinking, I need to talk to that guy. What all these...
Yes, exactly. And our listeners are so excited to hear what you have to say, Jim. Why don't you start by just kind of going off that background, talking a little bit more about yourself, your role, how you got here if you want, because it's an incredible journey, and just, what your day-to-day is like.
I think you described the sequence of things, and I should point out that there's been a sequence because I didn't have a great idea. When I came out of school, I was going to be a teacher, but it just it didn't work out the way I was hoping to, and I had to make a lot of decisions. I got recruited into technology, and so I just thought I'll try this for a while, but then I ended up staying in it for the majority of my career. And you start, I think people that end up in L&D might have a prior career in just taking problem solving for company.
Yeah.
You get into very extensible issues, you take a look at the problems, and I started learning that everybody's solving problems all the time. And I kind of followed that progression. I liked working with manufacturing companies because it was interesting. They're very underappreciated. The people that work in that field, it gave me a lot of time to work with people who operate machines, do tasks, tools, and they were a nice counterpart to office people. I was sort of in between both, that helped me shape where I wanted to go with this. And then opportunities, the more you meet more people. I spent a lot of time working with user groups and community groups and helping people for free, and so they start knowing who you are, and that led to other opportunities. So I can only recommend to people to volunteer as much of your time to your peers as you can, because they remember the good things. That's always helped me in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, working at Microsoft right now, what's a little bit of your day-to-day like in your role?
Well, Microsoft is a super fast-paced place. It's a very empowering place because everybody, I think we're 250,000 troubleshooters working at Microsoft. So there's a lot of
Love
energy
that.
to this, and
Yeah.
my typical day is really I'll meet. I look at the more practical aspects of our business because I have creative designers who they work from a general plan that I've given them or that a manager on my team has given to them. So that allows me to spend time looking at our business futures and where we're investing our resources. So now in my career, I'm looking so kind of learning investment strategies. Where are we putting our people and our money in the right places to work with our business? So we're always trying to look ahead of our business because technology, as we know, Microsoft especially changes every month. With AI is just wonderful. um,
Yeah.
it sort of reminds me of the super helpful colleague that helps you get your next project done, but on the way they stole your lunch too. So you have to be careful about how you work with it. But it's really changed the way I look at how we prioritize our investment and
Yeah.
how and because there's different ways to approach AI. We can talk about that
Yeah.
as we get to, but that's what I do now. I'm looking for those opportunities and how to best guide the talented people I'm working with because Microsoft is just teeming with super intelligent, smart, driven people.
I bet. So, who are some of these learners that kind of you work with and that you oversee, and what are some of their challenges that they're facing?
Well, it's a varied group of people because we have over 50 different roles in our group, and I can talk more about role-based learning as well when we wish, but I'd say you have like a company within a company in the cloud because you have people working in our data centers that are working. It's a physical job. They're working in very challenging conditions. They work from really strict schedules. They have hands-on skills in addition to knowledge skills. So they have many more challenges than folks like me that work in an office. The office workers have a different kind of expectation because they're expected to show up to work knowing how to do a lot of the job already from their education, from their prior experience. Where we hire people for our data centers that are across the board. They might have done this for 30 years. It's not an old industry. I remember being an IT manager before there were data centers. But also we have people who are brand new and they just want to get a chance. And so we have to make sure our learning actually not just teaches them what they're supposed to do, but keeps them motivated as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you kind of approach some of these bigger like workforce development challenges like across the company or across, in your sector?
Well, instead of being overwhelmed by thousands of people as your audience, the approach I took was something I learned it's not just me, but other people agreed with it. But we took an approach from a sales enablement model because I was lucky to have a few years of sales enablement in my background. And so
Yeah.
we looked at our executive org chart, the old org chart business, and she had our executive had conveniently divided the organization up into pillars or functional peers, parts of the organization they had. And so we broke down each pillar of the organization by their specific business charter and their responsibilities. And then we were able to kind of look at the skilling that's involved to meet those needs. And so that kind of gave me an idea to create learning plans for each pillar.
Yeah.
So
That's
you're
great.
not trying to tackle the giant problem. You're actually divided into 10 smaller problems, if you will.
Yeah, that's great because you can't do it like it's maybe too crazy to do it on an individual basis, but it also is not going to apply to pillar A to pillar C. So that's a brilliant way to kind of address such a large workforce.
Oh, thanks. It gave us a way to personalize it too.
Yes, yeah, exactly. As the skill sets needed for success continue to shift, obviously we've already mentioned AI, as it does usually come up pretty quickly here on this podcast. But AI being AI, we'll get more into that. But as just skill sets in general continue to shift with all of the changing technologies that are available to us and the ways that we're working with one another. What strategies does your team use to ensure that your workforce stays adaptable and prepared?
That's a good question. It comes back to the values of personalization at the user level and data literacy. So how not only is this attuned to what the person needs based on their job, but it's also giving them skills where they can help them as a result of your training program, they can help themselves more in the future. They won't
Yeah.
need, it's actually, it sounds like a self-defeat, like we're trying to eliminate ourselves, but we're not. We're trying to create an audience that becomes more and more self-reliant on the recurring needs they have, so we can focus on the new skills and new knowledge they need instead of always creating training for the basics. So
Yeah.
that's one. And AI, we'll keep coming back to it, but AI is something I divided into two pieces. There's AI that's kind of your end user learning how to use a tool like Microsoft Copilot. I'll put that in their product placement.
Have
Copilot,
to.
okay, people want to know how to take advantage of this great tool. So one of my colleagues created a program about how people can learn how to use Copilot for Office 365 products. It's a very straightforward program, but it was immensely satisfying for people to get this start. And so we knew
Yeah.
that would be an emotional boost for the audience, but it helps the development team because we're looking for ways to integrate AI into their workflow. So
Yeah.
again, it comes back to our um, office workers, or I just call them information worker from the old term, or are you a manufacturing data center employee, because they have different needs. So we chose to integrate AI into our learning systems for the data centers because they're working, because it would help them. They're on the clock. We wanted to, and it comes back to a time to value proposition that I need that my training actually pursues today. So you do personalize it based on the needs of the learner group.
Sure. Yeah. And two very different learning groups. But I love that. That's such a great example and such a very clear, easy way to start using AI too, where it's just like, hey, we know everyone's using this suite every day. So like, let's teach them how to use AI to use it better or more efficiently or rely on it a little bit more. And I think from that, just having a, like, per what you were saying, is like that gives them, once they kind of see how to do that, they can, take from that how to use AI to do something else, like outside of that suite. But you've given them like a core way for them to apply it to something that they know and live and breathe, I'm sure, every day.
Yeah, that's the hope, because the training we produce is teaching people how to learn a technology, a skill, or a task. It's not teaching them for everything they're going to need to know going forward, because in the spirit of a 70-20-10 model, 10% of that experience is formal learning, 20% is sort of organized events, if you will. And then that other 70% is just what you just said. It's just they're out there discovering the rest based on what foundation they've been given.
Yeah, absolutely. How does your team kind of assess and address skills gaps to stay agile in such a changing workforce?
Yeah, skills gaps. I mean, it's always the challenge when you're doing the analysis. We look for the gap areas. Otherwise, you end up with a catalog that's too big to manage. So, and that's where skilling is so important, because everyone everyone learns how to do tasks, but the challenge is, how do you draw the line with how many tasks are being taught and how many are just going to be learned because they're similar? So skilling gives you the opportunity to sit down and look at the you have to we take a look at the requirements of the job. So sometimes when new people come in to talk to us, we want to know the job descriptions of the people on their team
Hmm.
and the keywords in the job description. If they've properly used Copilot to write the job description with them, will identify our target areas to start with. That's the fascinating part of this work, because there's no one answer, but it's kind of like being in a investigation procedural show on television, because you're breaking down the clues, and we bring and continually stay in touch with the stakeholders, which are usually mid-level to high-level executives, because they have a different perception of what their users, our actual audience might think. So we have to keep what people think what they need to know to do their job versus what their leadership thinks their people need to know. There's usually a gap there too. So
Yeah.
we'll use their clues to start filling in the gaps, and we'll actually then we furnish some of the current products, learning products we might have. That usually fills in part of it too. I've had leaders come back to us and say, "Gosh, when you showed me your current offerings, you just solved 80% of my problem." And so communication is very important there, because it's
Yeah.
very difficult for learning teams at any big company to kind of stand out, get their message across, because there's so much crosstalk all the time.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you mention, that doesn't often, or that hasn't come up too often, is like the different gaps, not just like the basic obvious, like, oh, well, let's do a survey, see if you know how to do this, and all you don't like where you rank on it. It's like, where are the gaps in the whole system and the whole infrastructure? I think that's so important and something that doesn't get touched on a lot. So thank you
And
for sharing.
surveys are an interesting thing too, because as an old history teacher, because I am old and I was a history teacher for a while, you look history people look for primary resources as your perfect
Yeah,
target, not the secondary resources are fine. I mean, I love biographies of presidents, but that's a secondary resource.
right.
So we look for the same thing in our work. We want the primary resources are the people we're talking. That's where, surveys don't always get a fair shake, because a direct level 100 survey is primary intake from the people that just consumed your product. A larger survey, like a corporate satisfaction survey, is usually a secondary resource, because we're getting impression feedback from managers or leaders who may not take our training because it's meant for their people. It's not a matter of them skipping it, it's simply not designed for them, but they have a perception of how effective we are. That's very important to build into our gap analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. How do you currently measure kind of these programs? You just mentioned a little bit about like the surveys that you use, but are there other ways that you're measuring the effectiveness of these programs? And do you have any core KPIs that you use to really kind of track and report on?
Yeah, we use KPIs. They're also KPIs are different than OKRs, but OKRs are the flavor of the day for now. But an OKR, I like to break down OKRs that show our team's productivity to goals. Also, they show our audience's response to our work, and eventually we're going to move into an area that takes a lot more partnership to start showing how our work has influenced our audience's productivity. That's a
Wow.
difficult one. That's a very secondary piece of data, but we always want to know confidence, post-training confidence, and that's where level 1 surveys come in. We also look at NPS, which is Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
Net Promoter Score is useful because it's different than a survey, because people are actually having to endorse something
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah.
And so that is a very high level of recommendation, I think, that we like to use. So we try to make sure that we have the NPS is always steady or growing. But we also look at the performance levels of the audience, because that's where our leaders are looking at. Our leaders are saying, okay, you've trained 5,000 people were trained on this program. Uh, and they're saying it helps them. They're saying it doesn't. But we'd like to what we're going to try to do further is to look at the performance by role. So that's why you need to know what are the actual OKRs for each role. What is a technical program manager chartered? What's success for a technical program manager? Because it's easier to look at what's success for a data center technician, because their job is very tightly mapped to work tickets. So we can try to take a look at how productive they are, how many tickets they've worked on, what's their quality rating, because it's just at that point it's just mathematics, and that makes it a lot easier if we can get down to math instead of perception.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, that's great. Now, do you have a successful kind of case study, either mentioning or using some of these KPIs or not, but a case study that exemplifies an L&D or mentoring initiative that you've been a part of that has significantly impacted employee performance and the overall success of the organization?
Yeah, people will have different stories, but I think my approach is always to build foundational programs that influence many others. So one of the foundational things that my team did a few years ago, because it takes time to show the results, was to switch from a lot of training teams used to take a conventional approach to you put your training out there, it's topic based and it's in a catalog, and then people go to your LMS and find the training, sign up. Or there might be a team. Sometimes sales groups create a quarterly learning plan with a list of courses you're supposed to take, and that's the level of personalization people get. And and it does have some effectiveness, but year after year, I would read comments from people that had trouble finding training. They weren't sure which one to take. And this was a theme. So one day I know it's kind of nerdy, but I was reading a course catalog from the University of Washington. I mean, it's a book, right? So I was reading it, and I thought, this is what I need to do. So
Make course catalog.
we decided to shift the thinking from you're no longer going to have to go to this edifice of a catalog to find things, and we're no longer going to send you this learning plan that is somebody else's opinion of what you should know. So we're going to create learning paths for every role in the organization. So all you really need to know as a new employee is what your job title is, and you'll find a path of courses that are recommended for you to be successful at this job. They're not that's there's always required training at companies for compliance and privacy and security and important things and safety. But this wasn't really about that. And we had to change the culture. This is not a required learning list because sometimes they're rather long.
Yeah.
This is what I broke into 4 phases of onboarding, what I called acumen, when you're learning a lot of tasks. And then the third phase is when you've kind of reached the first plateau, and now you're regarded as senior. So the tasks will be different now. You might start learning other skills that aren't necessarily a course, but are programs. So you might get a PMP certificate now recommended to you. So these paths had a combination of things we created plus things that were curated by interviewing hundreds of people to determine what was the mark of success for this role. And the idea was not necessarily to have everybody just take training all the time. The idea was if I were a person that was looking for a different job, I could look at the role path for any job in the organization and start signing up for training for that role so I could prepare myself for the next step in my career as well as learning my own. And people started seeing that a lot of career paths had similar learning at the first 2 phases, but they started to diverge when they became more senior. And this changed the way people looked at learning in our division completely because now they were becoming accustomed to something created for them. And our satisfaction ratings for these learning paths were higher than the individual course satisfaction ratings.
Yeah, I bet, because then it's like you're getting it's something that you want, like you want to advance your career and you're getting information that helps you do that. So you're consuming it with much more enthusiasm and passion and more excited to do it and actually feeling like it's helping you progress. So
Yeah, it's
that's
for
awesome.
you, not for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now we've been talking about it quite a bit so far, but what role does technology play in your programs and how do you leverage different tools and platforms to kind of enhance learning and mentoring experiences for employees?
Well, technology is always there, and it's really a boost for us, not a problem. So, but it's because it's in our development tools, it's in our the innovations, but we also have to consider the technology innovations our audience are experiencing too. They're outside of our direct focus, so we always have to stay in touch about what they're doing too. Everybody talks about AI, but it has so many different variations. We need to know how people are using this because not all technologies are necessarily scalable. So we have to make sure that we make our investment on scalable ideas. So one example is for several years, we were trying to scale up our training with a hardware solution. I won't mention it because the folks that worked on it may not want to know that, but it turned out it wasn't a feasible business model for the company, so it was sunset after a few years. And so I decided I was no longer going to put my team's bank on hardware. We were going to be a software focused technologies because it's less expensive, it's more easily updated, and it's more easily integrated by us because we're not dealing with a physical machine solution. The people work with servers all the time, work with machines. That's okay. We can do training on machines, but we weren't going to rely on machines for our development, for our investment. Uh,
Yeah.
that was a big change for us. And I also approached technology with 3 basic uh, rules from system design. Every industrial engineer knows your system design is there's a conceptual aspect. So what is this about and why is it needed? The logical aspect, how will this be produced? And the physical aspect is what will this do or provide towards the purpose of why are we, we know why we're doing this and how is this going to do it? And then of course all the iterations that follow, like you have to
Yeah.
figure out the 20 ways this will fail and 20 different mitigation plans to solve it along the way. But that does make more um, reliable products that we create. So
Yeah.
my approach, technology is a tool. Sometimes we have to teach technology, not my favorite thing to do. I rather integrate the technology into your workflow. So we work with engineering teams to integrate um, Copilot, for example, into the tools that people use. So, pardon me. And so instead of taking a course and then working on something, we understand there's times where you need to know something right now. Just in time is not a new concept, but AI has given us a chance to make just in time a really cool concept
Yeah.
where AI will not just have training for you right now when you need it, but it understands what you're doing. So if I'm
Yeah.
working on something that's time bound, AI is not going to present something to me that takes 20 minutes to watch. It's going to bring up certain learning that we've created, which the industry term would be micro learning. And so when you're on the clock, you're going to see videos that you want that are 2 minutes long. So you
Yeah.
get exactly what you need to jog your memory right now to keep working, or they'll just help you to ask better questions if you need help.
Yeah.
So that's really been a big approach for us. I think it's going to be really successful. It's already
Yeah.
off to a very good start in our initial release.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's so important too, just as someone who learns so well by doing, I have to be able to like use it and like understand, like be in my day to day in the flow of work to start using the technology to be like, okay, like, because someone can talk to me for 30 minutes, like trying to sell me something like, oh, you should do this because it'll help you do X, Y, and Z. But I'm more like likely to trust someone like a friend or a colleague who's like, oh, I use
Yeah.
it to do this in my day to day. And I'm like, oh, brilliant. Like, I get that. Like 2 minutes, you have to tell me that. And then I get it and understand it and make the decision to use it or not, you
Yeah,
know?
and if no one's around, the AI client will you can ask questions to against that client, and it may not answer your question because it's not perfect solution, but it will give you more context to ask a better question when you
Yes.
find a human, so
Yes.
both of you can get to the solution faster. And so
Yes.
time to value, TTV is a big theme for us. We want to lower our develop. We're using AI to lower our develop or reduce our development cycle, and also reduce the amount of training time a person needs, because we can return that value back to the business in presumed dollars. That
Yeah.
not just dollar savings, but the more time we get back to our business, the more time they have to make more dollars for the company.
Right. That's awesome. Jim, kind of shifting gears a little
Mhm.
bit, talking more just about the industry in general, which we're so excited to get your kind of
Yeah.
perspective, just given your amazing background in this space. But, thinking, over the past 5 years or, in your experience, however long you've been in this space, I can't remember the number, but a few
Neither can
a few
I.
more years than five. Looking back, how have you seen learning and development and mentoring programs evolve over the past 5 years or so or more?
Well, yeah, technology is the big influencer, but also people, the culture, and we have generational influences too on how people evolve and how they wish to learn. So what I kind of look at, sometimes break it down to variables and constants, and the constant are the people. They're always, you know, every generation of people have needs to learn something. The variable is how they wish to learn something.
Mm,
So that's what we always need to know, that the center of our every design is the person that's going to use this, the person that's going to learn, and everything else is peripheral to them. Sometimes learning models can get caught up in, we're going to use tool X or technology Y, and we're going to fit our solutions into those tools or technologies. And that, I think that limits learning teams. We're constantly looking at the audience, and I know it's generational conversations are common, but they're useful too. Any kind of point of view is useful because to answer your question, the tools will change. The and it wasn't that long ago people were in classrooms, and then classroom training does have a benefit, but there's a lot of variables that are involved with a physical event. So online training reduced some of the variables, but online training has limitations as well. It's not just learner preference, but the duration. I mean, the typical duration of an online course 5 years ago was 30 minutes, and now I've got my team targeting at 10 to 12 minutes because
Yeah.
it's not just people don't have time, it's just people can do other things with that time
Yeah.
than this. And that's how 2-minute videos come up. We're not trying to shorten everything, but the beauty of this is technology is allowing us to create more variety for people. And that's how, and people are the ones who are going to personalize this to what suits them. I can imagine all of our training or experiences to be completely optional for people instead of the old school of saying you must take these 20 courses. I don't see a need for that going forward. I think you're always going to have a few things people need to know based on company policy or on general cybersecurity, safety,
Sure.
things like that. But even those teams, and we create some of that training too. Those things are shortening up too and becoming much more um, time to value, if you will, because
Yeah.
that's my that's that's my advice to any learning team is always think about your time to value.
Brilliant. I love that. That's such a good rule. Kind of on the flip side, Jim, we talked about looking back, like, and what has evolved. What do you see coming in the future with technology or, just how we keep, generations at the center of creating different micro learnings or what do you see the next 5 years or 10 years even looking like?
Well, I think that, and I do look at it from a company standpoint, but I think we're going to start looking earlier in the process. Right now, companies are doing this today, but I think it's going to become much more common where right now we create curriculum, the end-to-end curriculum for entry-level person to leader. I don't think we're going to be doing that the same way that we're doing it now. I think our leadership training is going to become much more collaborative and taking advantage of leaders to teach leaders, and we put together the opportunities for them to do this. I think our entry level training should be pushed further into our communities. I think not just colleges, but secondary schools as well, middle schools. I think we can start teaching technology to elementary school kids. I mean, I was
Yeah.
lucky. I grew up in a town where I started using a computer when I was 8.
Wow.
I didn't really understand why, but it was kind of nice to have something different. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but companies have a responsibility to work in that connected manner so that everybody is being. I think an average young person should be able to know if they want to work in a vocational field or university by the time they're in middle school.
Yeah.
And feel good about it. There's no
Yeah.
stigma between the two. I think people should know it. Do I want to go to school? Do I want to go into a service business? Do I want to go to a vocational? Because we look at our European partners and they're outstanding at guiding their young people through this experience already.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lesson that companies can learn and governments can learn that um, companies need to start outfitting our school systems with not just money, but
Yeah.
actually partnership.
Right. Right. No, I love that. And I love what you were saying at the beginning too, with collaboration, like collaborating with like for leadership development, like going it's almost like going both ways, and bringing the same kind of like communal concept, but like obviously that looks different for, for leaders and versus into the community. But I think that's so true. And it's so beautiful in that, yes, technology is coming at us like rapidly expanding
Yeah.
always and new, but it's I think like the way we make best use of that to what you're saying is like actually grab to our people almost closer, if that makes sense. So I love
Yeah,
that.
'cause that's the true value here. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's kind of that simple engineering model too about variables and constants that
Yeah.
keeps it in perspective. And where technology is going to keep changing. Each one is its own opportunity that we need to take advantage of, but we always make sure that we're doing this for the benefit of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, to close on a positive note, What's the most important lesson that you've learned as a leader that you would pass on to someone just starting out on their journey?
Well, it's to be patient. Everybody arrives at the everybody eventually will arrive at the same conclusion, but you have to let people get there. Uh,
Mm,
at times in my career, I can become impertinent with people if they're not getting it, they're not understanding it. But that's not about them at all. I think what I've learned is it's about me and how do I want to what who's the person I want to put in front of somebody else. And so you we need to, my lesson is get away from thinking about things that are good and bad, like and dislike. You can like and dislike is okay, but good and bad is not. Those should just be eliminated because you want everybody has to come to that conclusion themselves. So the idea
yeah.
is to engage as many people as you can, get the right people into responsibilities, but engage as many people as you can because the people that may not be qualified today are going to be they're going to be the ones running this tomorrow. So and that's our job to make sure they're equipped. So I'd say patience and stay very open-minded about technology. Don't get caught up in one way to do things.
Absolutely. Both such great, valuable lessons. Thank you so much, Jim, for sharing that.
Oh,
And
I appreciate it.
thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here. You have such an amazing background. So our listeners are, I'm sure, so grateful to hear your story and your advice and your experiences. So thank you. We really appreciate it, Jim.
Oh, thank you as well. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of the NovoEd Talks podcast.